The new administration has declared a tariff war on Mexico, Canada, and China. President Trump stated on his social media platform, "Will there be some pain? Yes, maybe, and maybe not." But right before I sat down to record this video, he stated that the tariffs would be placed on hold for 1 month. But here's the catch. We're already seeing these countries retaliate despite delayed tariffs, which will have real consequences on the items that you purchase. So what items are about to increase in price, and what can you do about it? If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. Let me state up front that on this channel we avoid politics at all costs, but as we see these new policy changes roll out that will impact our lives, we try to communicate this information so you can prepare. Now, before I begin, I do want to announce that we're reopening our online city prepping membership next week. And this is a community where we provide you with new monthly content, live streams, and an active community to help you on your preparedness journey. We're offering a discounted rate for 1 day this Sunday, February 9th. If you want early access at our discounted rate, I'll post a link to our sign-up page in the description and comments section, and we'll email you a coupon code for the early sign-up on Sunday morning. Now, that being said, we have to discuss what we can see now and in the future regarding these tariffs. The mere threat of tariffs can shake the global economy. The markets were sent into turmoil on Monday by just announcement of a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada and a 10% tariff on goods from China, and most of which, just 24 hours later, have been put on hold. Now, the president wrote a clarification that said, "We may have in the short term a little pain, and people understand that." In this video, I want to address the little pain that we will feel regarding our supply chain, prices, and our future by providing you with 10 things where you'll see price increases if tariffs do go through. You're going to want to hear them all because I don't see some of these covered in the mainstream media. So here are 10 highly volatile tariff items. Number 1, food. Even though the United States is a major food producer, it relies on imports for items like coffee, sugar, and tropical fruits. Tariffs on these imports can lead to shortages and higher prices for consumers. There are foods you might immediately notice, like avocados for your guacamole, which is a good one to watch. 90% of the avocados in America, they come from Mexico. The tariffs with Mexico were put on hold, but take a look at the avocado prices where you go to buy them for Super Bowl Sunday. Chances are they may have already spiked or are going up, not down, even without a tariff in place. A key issue with the food supply during tariff impositions is the potential for domestic surpluses of certain items as the focus shifts to locally produced goods. Tariff wars operate on a tit-for-tat basis. When one country enacts a tariff and the other retaliates, products from both nations become prohibitively expensive. For example, the United States might face an oversupply of soybeans it can't export, given that it currently sells 483,000 metric tons of Canada. Similarly, Canada would need to seek new markets for its 2.6 million tons of canola oil, typically exported to the United States each year. The longer tariffs continue, the more likely other markets will be found, and original supplies will never be restored. Number 2, alcohol. You may not be a drinker, so you may not be concerned about Mexican beer and short supply at your stores. And even if you're not one to imbibe a glass of a beer or hard alcohol, you have to consider the physical impact on some manufacturers and even states. Kentucky, I'm specifically talking about you. The Canadian province of Ontario is removing all American alcohol from shelves starting Tuesday. Ontario's Liquor Control Board is one of the largest single purchasers of American alcohol in the world, with close to $1 billion in purchases, almost 25% of the entire U.S. export market. Now, British Columbia, Manitoba, Newfoundland, Quebec, and Nova Scotia are doing the same, adding to another $1 billion in alcohol purchases. The sudden loss of $2 billion in annual sales, 45% of the entire U.S. alcohol export market, within a week, is going to severely impact 35 states, especially Kentucky distilleries. Number 3, trucks and automobiles. Even if you don't drive a truck, tariffs will impact both truck and automobile prices. Although Mexico's tariffs are on hold, there was an exception written in on the proposed tariffs for automobile parts. Many American car parts are made in Mexico, and disruption could force automakers to shut down assembly lines within a week. Canada also manufactures and ships engines to the United States, including V8 engines for Super Duty pickups, Mustangs, and F-150s. Now, Canada's Oakville assembly plant was set to assemble F-Series Super Duty pickups in 2026, but that might be put on hold. Starting this month, if the tariffs go into effect, Ford is going to pay a 25% tariff on every engine and other components brought into Dearborn, Michigan, significantly increasing vehicle prices. Beyond engines, Canada produces various car components like crankshafts, camshafts, and fuel injection systems for General Motors, Honda, and Ford. Car components often cross the U.S. border multiple times during production, incurring additional duties and impacting the entire automotive industry. Now, these tariffs create significant fluctuations in price, supply, and demand imbalances and product inventory. And if trade wars persist, expect new car prices to rise by an average of $3,000 and parts for used cars to be in short supply. Number 4, steel and aluminum. A 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum imports disrupt North America's integrated metal industry, affecting $1.3 trillion in United States-Canada trade. Now, Canadian aluminum supports 500,000 American manufacturing jobs and generates over $200 billion in U.S. economic output. The tariff will raise input costs for U.S. manufacturers, reducing competitiveness and risking job losses in key sectors like automotive, construction, and aerospace. From rebar to aluminum cans to aerospace aluminum components to hot rolled steel to electrical steel, a lot of metal crosses the borders, and it gets manufactured into thousands of components and millions of machines in construction projects. Now, I'm not going to discuss cars here because that should be obvious after my last point. Suffice it to say that a lot of metal crosses the border, and at least with Canada, if these tariffs go into effect, now a 25% tax would be included every time it crosses the border. Number 5, foods from big box stores. Target, Walmart, and Costco, they all have prominent physical locations and offer a wide selection of products, many of which come from Canada, Mexico, and China. Now, tariffs on even a fraction of the products under their roofs ripple across all the products under that roof. And we're not referring to manufactured products entirely made and produced by Canadian companies. Heinz Ketchup, Coca-Cola, Campbell's Chunky Soup, Double Bubblegum, French's Mustard, Swedish Fish, Quaker Oats, Minute Maid Juices, Pepsi Beverages, Gatorade, Doritos, and more companies and products that I could even begin to list out for you are all manufactured, bottled, or packaged in Canada. These products from American-owned companies will have a 25% tariff levied on them if they cross the border. The American companies, they have to pay that 25%, and they mark up the wholesale price of their product to pass the cost on to the retailer. The retailer then marks up the price to recoup the added cost and then passes the price increases on to you, the consumer. Look around the next time you're in a big box or grocery store. A shockingly large amount of the products that you see are all at some point manufactured or packaged outside of the United States. You can expect your grocery bill to jump by a corresponding 25% if the current and projected tariffs all occur. Number 6, packaging. It may seem trivial at first glance, but the current and projected tariffs, they're going to raise the cost of cardboard. International Paper Company in the United States has annual sales of over $22 billion. They also have sheet container and recycling plants in Mexico. Now, the second largest company, Smurfit Westrock, operates in 40 countries with 500 plus production facilities worldwide, 100,000 plus team members, and over $18 billion in annual sales. Georgia Pacific, a name that you might recognize, is the third largest cardboard manufacturer with also $18 billion in sales. But they also make everything from wood pulp to bath tissues and paper towels. Are you ready for another toilet paper shortage? Georgia Pacific has 11 production plants in Mexico. Consider the last package that you received, the box you unpacked or put in your cart at the store. That packaging came from somewhere likely across the border. Add a few more pennies to the cost of that from manufacturers, and that rising cost, it gets passed on to the consumer. Number 7, lumber. In 2023, the United States produced approximately 31.4 billion board feet of lumber, but imported around 13.2 billion board feet, primarily from Canada. Now, the recent imposition of a 25% tariff on Canadian imports by the United States is poised to disrupt this trade dynamic. The National Association of Home Builders, or NAHB, reports that tariffs on Canadian lumber have risen beyond 25% to nearly 40%, substantially increasing costs for home builders. And this expense surge will likely be passed on to consumers, exacerbating affordability issues in an already challenging housing market. Analysts predict that the tariffs could further impact builders' margins and lead to production delays. Now, existing home sales, they've struggled while new home sales continue to grow, but builders have to offer discounts to move inventory. The overall impact of the tariffs will depend on builders' ability to adapt to supply chain challenges and maintain pricing power. Number 8, crude oil. The 10% tariff on oil, natural gas, and electricity is going to have an immediate impact on American households. Specifically, crude oil imports from Canada and Mexico could significantly disrupt the U.S. energy market, as these countries supply over 71% of U.S. crude imports. In 2023, U.S. refineries imported approximately 6.5 million barrels per day of crude oil, primarily from Canada, 60%, and Mexico. Now, these imports are essential to U.S. refinery operations, which rely on specific crude blends to optimize production. Higher tariffs increase refinery costs, leading to higher gasoline, diesel, and heating oil prices for consumers. And while the U.S. could increase domestic oil production, it wouldn't fully offset lost Canadian and Mexican imports due to differences in crude types, like sweet crude versus heavy crude, refinery limitations in what they're geared to handle, and the time required to ramp up drilling. Higher fuel prices, supply disruptions, and economic risks, such as retaliatory tariffs and strained trade relations, would likely be the more immediate consequences. Number 9, electricity. Canadians, they're upset about these 25% tariffs, to put it mildly. They're calling for a dollar-for-dollar tariff match, escalating the trade war, and even suggesting cutting off electricity exports to the United States. Now, Canada exports approximately 33 terawatt hours of electricity to the United States annually, accounting for about 90% of U.S. electricity imports, enough to supply 3.3 million homes for a year. And if these tariffs are implemented, a 10% tax will be put on imported electricity. U.S. utilities cannot immediately fill the void if the supply is halted, leading to inevitable and frequent rolling blackouts. The overstrained and aging U.S. power grid, Eastern, Western, and Texas interconnections, they would suffer greatly, forcing them to transfer and load balance electricity. This could instantly become a national emergency. So preparing for potential energy shortages is crucial if the tariff war escalates. Number 10, fertilizers. If you're a farmer, when I say fertilizer, you should think of any fruits or vegetables grown in the United States. You can buy strictly from American farms, but they're going to have to source their fertilizer from somewhere other than the United States if they want to have a profitable harvest. Now, the U.S. relies on imports for over 95% of its potash fertilizer needs, with nearly 90% of that coming from Canada, according to data from the USDA. Canada also supplies U.S. growers with over 8% of its nitrogen fertilizer needs, accounting for 25% of U.S. nitrogen fertilizer imports. The price of everything grown in the United States is already on its way up, and you're going to realize this more at the grocery store, likely with the spring harvest. It's the broader food supply chain that I'm most worried about as a casualty of these tit-for-tat tariff wars, and you should be as well. I would suggest that you watch these two videos here on the side of the screen. The first is a video that we did on the tariffs before they were implemented, and that's going to give you a heads up on products that we didn't cover in this video, many of which come from Mexico. The second video is on easy steps to build a disaster plan. Even as we face an uncertain future because of man-made policy and politics, we do live under the threat of disasters of the natural kind. It's critical you have a plan for those. So what do you think? Will these tariffs go into effect? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. As always, stay safe out there.